Hello, beautiful people out there. My name is Melissa Alexander, and I'm going to be presenting you about Visual Kei. Um, Pardon me, I'm really nervous, especially because I've never openly talked about my love and my passion for Visual Kei before, and I've been in this subgenre for about 10 plus years, so it's really nerve wracking. But it's a pleasure to see you all. Thank you so much for having me here. And after I do a quick PowerPoint presentation about the history of Visual Kei, different bands and influences and such, afterwards I will be presenting a mini tutorial of one of my favorite songs by one of my all-time favorite Visual Kei groups. I'm presenting a makeup look, so it's free to follow along if you would like to, but I know that it can be a bit difficult sometimes. I know for me, it gets really difficult when it comes to doing makeup and wanting to like stand out. But thank you again. I hope everyone is having an amazing day. If I slip up on my words or if I like stutter a bit, just forgive me. Thank you so much. Um, Alexis, I'd like to start the PowerPoint. Okay, so my presentation today is called Can You See Me? And it is a Visual Kei style Get Ready With Me. Like I said, my name is Melissa Alexander. My pronouns are they, them. And I've been into Visual Kei fashion, style, makeup, everything since I was about 12. So yeah, about 11 years ago. So I'll just say 10 plus for now. I haven't been able to actually dress in the style that I wanted to until like since like before like 5 years ago. So I'm still fairly new to everything. I'm not like a guru, I'm not like a professional makeup artist or anything. I just enjoy the style and I enjoy the message it portrays of just being unique, standing out and being yourself. So, yeah, I've also been into makeup forever. I mean, one of my earliest memories is literally sitting in my mom's room, like playing with her old makeup and everything. And yeah. So my Instagram is my most used platform, and that is at Reta. And for those of you who may know Visual Kei, Reta is a member of the Gazette, the basis actually, and I've literally stylized all of my usernames on every social media platform after him because I was like, that's such a cool way to spell his name. No one would figure it out. I also recently started a YouTube channel, recently being like late last week. I only have one video up, but I will be uploading more Visual Kei makeup tutorials and fashion tips and things like that. So if you would like to check those out, or my TikTok, which is also at Reta, I would very much appreciate it. Thank you so much. If not, then don't worry about it. We're all friends here. So, beginning with Visual Kei, the definition literally translates to visual style. It's a movement and subculture known to have originated in the 80s, and it's kind of comparable to like what we have here in America, where it's like glam metal or hair metal, as a lot of people like to call it, and stuff. And a lot of the key components usually include like elaborate hairstyles, makeup, fashion, and stage performances, and is often paired with androgynous looks. One thing to know about Visual Kei is that you do not have to be androgynous to do Visual Kei. I, as a non binary person, it was hard for me coming into terms with, you know, not being strictly femme and also being into a style that like celebrates androgyny and celebrates not conforming to either femme or masculine aesthetics. But as I got older and I really truly learned the definition of Visual Kei being just it's you stand out, you are unique, you are you. It helped me express myself better, which is why Visual Kei is like super important to me. um Today we'll be discussing the rise and unfortunate decline of Visual Kei, the bands, the style, the different mini movements created in like inspired by Visual Kei, as well as how Visual Kei has impacted my style and my way of living, and how you can also like achieve the Visual Kei look. There are some key components to achieving the Visual Kei look, but once you get the basics down, everything else is like freestyling. Oh yeah, and one thing to remind you of, Visual Kei is not dead. It may be a bit of a decline on like people expressing or talking about Visual Kei in general, but it's not dead. There are so many new Visual Kei bands that have been emerging like every single year, and there are still these things called live houses where Visual Kei bands can go and perform either for a small fee or for free just to get their publicity and like just get themselves out there. So there are multiple subgenres of Visual Kei, which didn't really surprise me when I found out about it. And like I learned more about it in high school. I was just kind of like, okay, so it's kind of like everything else where there's like the big category and then the little baby ones. So some of the prominent examples, because there are even minier subcultures in the mini subcultures, it's a lot. Just trust and believe me, it's a lot. Angura Kei, Kote Kei, Oshare Kei, Eroguro Kei, Nagoya Kei, Casual Kei, Kurofuku Kei, Tanbi Kei, and Wafu Kei. Those are all Keis with only the exception of one of them not being as dark as the rest, which is Oshare Kei, which is like the most well-known of all the subgenres of Visual Kei other than Visual Kei itself. I'm going to be breaking those down and I'll kind of go into a little bit of detail about which groups are under which subgenres just so that you get an idea. And afterwards, if you want to do research on your own and you want to find out other groups that may be in a subgenre that you like, go for it. I totally endorse it. The styles that I mostly follow are the Kote Kei and the Casual Kei. Casual Kei still being Visual Kei, but not as elaborate. I wish I had the patience, the money, the time to actually make and or purchase a lot of elaborate costumes because I would love to. Honestly, I would. Oh, it would mean the world to me. But currently, I don't have those kinds of resources. And finding out about Casual K was like the greatest thing for me because I was like, I can still be Visual K and like wear whatever my mom wants me to wear until I get out of here. Sweet. It's perfect. So, starting with Angura Kei, it began in the 60s. It's one of the oldest forms of Kei, other than Eroguro, which started in the 20s, but we'll get there soon. It stems from the English word for underground, and so a lot of it has to do with sometimes uniform, sometimes traditional Japanese attire like kimonos and stuff, but in a more underground sense. So the style is notably experimental. So you take the basic pieces of like anything, like I said, whether it be like a uniform of some sort, whether it be like a suit, maybe a naval uniform, maybe a military uniform or military based uniform, or maybe some form of kimono or something. It's literally just taking something that is super formal and then mixing it up so that it suits you and your style and your aesthetic. It also is a Oh no, so I was wrong. I was right. Okay. I just had to make sure. This is also closely related to Eroguro Kei because of the different values and beliefs that both styles typically have, them both being like, oh, hey, there are a lot of grotesque things in this world. Why don't we talk about them more? So here are some examples of some bands. And one of the most notable of the three of them is this top band right here named Mook, which is, or Mooch. Oh my goodness, I feel so bad because I forgot how to pronounce their name. But they are a Anguro K band that usually delves into darker subtext and darker lyrics while still having that traditional like flair. So yeah, here are some examples. And just as a heads up, my boyfriend has helped me out with a lot of the information and a lot of the pictures and stuff in here. So if you don't really see any labels or anything, it like my apologies. I will make sure that all of the bands are credited and listed in a separate document so that way you can do your research or like look them up or listen to any type of music or whatever. Yeah. So Eroguro Kei, like I said, is similar to Anguro Kei, and a lot of bands tend to bridge that gap. So if you've ever heard of like Duran Gray, earlier when they first debuted and they were dominating like the late 90s to early 2000s, they bridged the gap between eroguro and anguro with like their traditional style, but with a lot of heavy and darker lyrics, heavier music, and with a lot of the bloody kind of gory visuals. So eroguro obviously is a combination of the English words erotic and grotesque. Not obviously because I don't expect everyone to know that, but obviously because I wrote it down for myself. The culture eroguro Kei is influenced by has a history that's older than Anguro Kei's, like I said, stemming from the 20s and 30s, and places emphasis on eroticism and horror. However, it does not always need to include nudity or extreme gore. There are actually quite a few examples of bands who have crossed into eroguro Kei and have made music that have had darker lyrics and talk about very grotesque things and maybe mentions like blood and or nudity, but doesn't explicitly show it and isn't explicit with it in the lyrics. So like you can be subtle with it, but then you can also be like over the top with it. Eroguro doesn't have an exact aesthetic or fashion style. It's one of the Ks that you can really just have fun with as long as you know, are paying homage to all of the horrific and kind of creepy things that made the K in the first place. It is more related to what's being spoken about. There have been plenty of songs of tragic stories that have happened to other people, fictional, mind you, or things that have happened in like our world that kind of also bleed into eroguro. Laroke is also a subcategory of eroguro where it's like it focuses mostly on the medical stuff. So, like the bloody lab coats and like bandages, syringes, and things like that. This is how it's presented in Visual Kei. Obviously, things are different outside of the music genre, but in the music genre, in the fashion, scene and everything, this is how it is portrayed. So yeah, and like I said, here are a couple of examples. One of the eldest and most popular examples of eroguro Kei is this band on the left, and they're called Caligari, which is broken down from the title of the experimental horror movie called The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari back in the 20s. It was a German expressionist film, and when it came over to America, it literally took off. It took off in America so hard that it was also featured and shown in like 70 other countries around the world, including Japan, and that's where they got their influence. Born is another group that also deals with eroguro, but like I said earlier, there are bands that don't explicitly talk about blood and nudity, or they don't explicitly show it on screen, and they are a group that practices that. Kote K is pretty much the old school. Like people consider it like the most established form of Visual Kei, and it's the type that most people think about when they see or like when they hear Visual Kei. They're expecting the big colorful hair and the elaborate makeup, or they're expecting, even if it's not like elaborate costume or elaborate makeup, they are expecting elaborate hair. And that's where Visual Kei kind of stemmed from. So there are two main types of Kote Kei, which are black and white. Black Kote is like the darker, the, system sucks kind of music. But then the white Kote Kei is like the more ballad, more gentle, but still with hard rhythmic music. Yeah, I hope that makes sense. I honestly hope a lot of this I'm saying is making sense. I've never actually been able to explain this to people. And here are some examples of Kote Kei bands, which would be like the founders of like Visual Kei. So Luna C, X Japan, all of which I will get more into. And other groups like Bucktick and stuff, which happens to be one of my favorites. Oshare Kei, like I said before, is the style that is most distinctive and most well known, other than Visual Kei as a whole. It is a hit or miss amongst a lot of the fans, though, because when you think Visual Kei and when you see Visual Kei, one of the striking aspects of Visual Kei that you notice are the dark colors. Yeah, there can be other light colors that are mixed into it, but the base of your Visual Kei look is usually black or some other dark color. Oshare Kei has minimal to no black and very minimal dark colors. They're more positive, they're more upbeat, and for a lot of people, they prefer Oshare Kei as their favorite form of Visual Kei because not everyone wants to listen to songs that can trigger you or make you sad. And a lot of people consider Oshare Kei to be like a happy place. They're like, oh, if I'm feeling down, I'll listen to Visual Kei. But if I'm feeling good and I want to jump around, eat some sugar, bounce off the walls, then I'll listen to Oshare Kei any day. That's perfectly fine. And another reason why people tend to, not consider it Visual Kei is because Oshare Kei tends to be more pop. It tends to be more dance. It tends to be more like upbeat. Not as much rock, though there are still some strong rock elements because it is still Visual Kei. So the aesthetic style tends to be closer to street fashion. So technically, what I'm wearing right now, if this top was like a neon green and like I didn't have like blue in my hair, maybe if it was like pink or something, I would technically be dressing in Oshare Kei style. Also, if my fishnet was like white instead of black, I would technically be dressing in Oshare Kei style. So like street fashion and like things that you would normally find in like regular stores, graphic t-shirts, things like that. Those are usually how you would dress if you want to embark in Oshare Kei. I tried a couple years ago. I really did. I tried for 3 months, I think, and I bought some clothes and I thought it was going to be amazing. I thought it was going to be the greatest thing ever. I was like, boom, trying a different style of Visual Kei. I'm going to rock this. And when I stepped out and I looked at myself, I said, no. Bright colors are like, I love bright colors, but they're just not for me. Like, they don't suit me and they don't really do much for me. Koteosa Kei also is a spin on Oshare Kei, and it's still streetwear. It's still, kind of upbeat. It's just that now there's more black. So there's still like the cute print, there's still the funky little hats, but there's more black incorporated into it. So forgot the pictures. My apologies, my sincerest apologies. But a couple of examples of some Oshare Kei bands would be SUG and Cafe, or is it on Cafe? I am the absolute worst when it comes to pronouncing band names. And another group called Dive, which was not one of, my favorite Oshare Kei band that disbanded a few years ago. It makes me sad, but feel free to check those out. Or if you need me to kind of like search up some pictures later on or like show you in depth what Oshare Kei is like, I am perfectly happy with doing that. And that goes for anything that I may show you in the PowerPoint. If you want me to elaborate more on certain things, or if you want me to find more examples for you, maybe make links to stuff, just let me know. And you can let me know at the end of everything. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay. Nagoya Kei is also another commonly known type of Visual Kei. Obviously, it started in Nagoya. And the style tends to focus more on the music than the actual look. Like, yeah, there's some weird makeup looks here and there. There's some weird hairstyles here and there. But it mostly focuses on the music and the message that it sends. A lot of Visual Kei fans, especially near the Nagoya area and even in Tokyo, are like very strong when it comes to vouching for Nagoya Kei because of how like it literally just centers around the music. And even though Visual Kei started as a visual movement, it was also a music movement. So it talked about like the music itself talked about a lot of important things, whether it be things that are happening in the world today, whether it be tragic stories about other people, or whether it be about themselves as a person. A lot of Visual Kei music tends to stem from talking about oneself and either your struggles or the things that you still struggle with, or how you view the world around you. Visual Kei is literally just like one big looking glass of like, here's how I see the world. Now you come here and you tell me how you see the world. Different? All right, cool. Let's make a song about it. Um, yeah. I feel extremely embarrassed, but it's okay. My boyfriend did his best. I will 100% introduce you to more groups and show you pictures and things afterwards. I apologize again for being unprepared. I was gonna put lots of pictures, but I guess I didn't. Okay, so casual K, kind of what I'm doing right now. Or as it's sometimes called, soft K, is just the same. It's like literally the same. It's like more casual, less makeup. You still have like the wild color combinations and you've got the really cool outfits and accessories and everything, but it's not as drawn out. It's very much just I woke up, I got like 10 minutes to spare. I drew some eyeliner on. I'm gonna go. It's okay. It's okay. Thank you. I just got message that, my boyfriend tried to add pictures, but Google Drive wasn't letting him. So again, our apologies. So yeah, musically Casual K is very influenced by pop rock. So if you've ever heard of the band Alice 9, or as they go by now, A9, they are a very well-known Casual K group. GRWM is also a Casual K group that disbanded a few years ago as well, but they were a lot on the darker side of Casual K. So they had the dark graphic band t-shirts, the crazy messy hair, and everything like that. There are other niche styles of Visual K, and this isn't even, to talk about like the hundreds and hundreds of others that that have either been invented since Visual K took off or are still being invented now. I even heard that there have been a couple of new Ks that have been invented under Visual K, like within the past like 2 or 3 years. I haven't found any mention or any articles about it, but I will continue to do research. I'm hoping that it's true and not just a fallacy, but we'll get there. So Kurofuku Kei is very niche. It's literally like you just wear all black. That's it. There's nothing else to really describe it as. You just wear all black. There is a band named Lynch. Oh, that's such an awful word. That is considered Kurofuku. They always wear black. Even when they first debuted back in the mid to late 2000s, they just wore all black. And I just kind of was like, okay, I mean, that's fine. I never knew that it was its own style until after I graduated high school, but you live and you learn. Tanbi K is Victorian / European inspired Visual K. So like Malice Miser, Versailles, all groups that a lot of people are familiar with. Nobody calls it Tanbi K, like at all, because like Tanbi is more like aesthetic, aesthetic style or whatever, but it's mostly European influence, like French Rococo and Renaissance. There have been some German influences and things like that, so they like to just call it European inspired rather than put a name to it. But because this is like the technical term for it, I decided to put it in here. Yeah, so extravagant costumes and makeup, those are the bands that you see where you've got guitarists that are wearing like hoop skirts and like very big poofy pretty dresses and are being a boss on the guitar, shredding away, like probably in platforms, just being absolutely amazing and beautiful. Love it. We love it here. And then Wafu K is I wouldn't say that it's Angura K, because Angura K is more theater. It's more theatrical. Whereas Wafuke is still Visual Kei. It's just that you traditionally, well, not traditionally, you see them in traditional garbs. Like there are bands that their entire image is around like traditional Japanese imagery. Those are bands like Kiryu and Kagura. Again, all bands that I will introduce to you in a little bit. So yeah, just like any style of music, there are certain groups and soloists that cannot be defined by any one genre or style. There are so many groups that have either changed and evolved in their style and still want to stay under the category of Visual Kei. But then there are other bands that have literally migrated to different K's underneath Visual Kei. So kind of like I was talking about earlier with Duran Gray being like Erogura or Angura Kei, like when they first debuted, but then getting more into just straight Visual Kei and thrash metal. So some popular bands that have changed their VK style or their K style in general multiple times are Duran Gray, The Gazette, who is my favorite group of all time, and Nocturnal Bloodlust. Some popular soloists are Gakt and Miyavi. Miyavi still technically considers himself to be part of the Visual Kei scene, but he's a lot more casual. And because he has a wife and kids now, he's just like, I gotta kind of tone it down a bit. We gotta tone it down a lot. And as far as Gakt is concerned, I always tease my boyfriend when I talk about Gakt because he absolutely adores Gakt. He's also changed a lot from being in Malice Miser, which was more like European inspired and like very big and theatrical, to going more of the Kurofuku, which is like all black, and then doing his thing. There's like people can change multiple times, like within a group or being solo. So there are some groups that just kind of don't care about the rules. They're like, it's Visual Kei. Where are the rules? Okay, so now we're gonna get into the actual history. I know that talking about different like types of Visual Kei and stuff is like incredibly confusing. So that's why I said I'm more than happy to talk about it more afterwards. Because really what's most important is talking about the rise and the fall of Visual Kei and how it's impacted a lot of people, not just myself. So Visual Kei has been described to have two major generations. The first generation beginning in the 80s and the second generation beginning in the early 2000s, as we will soon call Neo Visual Kei. The first generation is the one that birthed the Visual Kei scene and is like helped it rise. Psychedelic violence crime of visual shock. Try saying that 5 times. I was sitting here and I was like, psychedelic crime violence crime psychedelic, visual shock of psychedelic. It's a mouthful. But psychedelic violence crime of visual shock is the slogan of the most popular and the creators of Visual Kei, like the band, X Japan. X Japan gave this slogan in 1989, and a year after that, things just started taking off. Yoshiki, who is the frontman and one of the co-founders of X Japan, originally was like, yeah, we had the big hair, we were doing a bunch of stuff, we found out about glam metal and like hair metal and like all these other types of genres under the rock category, in the Western countries. So we decided, why don't we have something like that? Like, it's time for a change. So they came up with this slogan, and people were like, oh, well, if you're going to make music that's like so manly and macho and masculine and everything, you guys should be wearing uniforms and like all types of formal attire to like talk about stuff like this. And they said, you know what? Why should we do that? Let's just rebel against everything. And that's how the big hair and the more androgynous or feminine features when it comes to like outfits, makeup, and stuff, that's how that came to be. X Japan said, we're going past every single stereotype. Let's get on stage, scream about everything, whip our hair around, and look pretty while doing it. And you know what? I live by that. That is like my biggest motivation. Like, I just want to go outside and scream and look pretty. um, so X Japan are some of the pioneers of this absolutely beautiful movement and embraced a heavy style of music mixed with absolutely powerful ballads, which is another huge staple in Visual Kei music. The duality of 1 minute you're talking about how, the music industry as a whole does nothing but corrupt people. And then you turn around and you go, actually, let me write this love song real quick and talk about how I'm in love and how that hits different, because it does. And it really worked. It really did work. Like, when I get ready to talk about like the boom in like the 90s and the early 2000s, it has shaped us as a whole, I guess. Not a lot of people want to sit down and really acknowledge the fact that like Visual Kei is one of, I'm not saying it was the first, I'm not saying it was the greatest example of it, but it is one of the genres that was able to put hard rock and hard metal music and mix them with ballads and actually have them like coincide with each other and like mesh perfectly. I've even heard Visual Kei songs that start off as like heavy rock and then smooth over into a ballad before the end of the song, and I'm just sitting there like, what just happened? That was beautiful, but like, what was that? So the guitarist Hide, who we all miss and love dearly, is said to have been the inspiration for the term Visual Kei. Before the term Visual Kei, it started off as Visual Shock Kei, because it was supposed to be like, whoa, that's wild. Like, why is your hair defying gravity? Like, I don't know. I kind of want to get lost in it, stuff like that. And when they felt that it was a bit too long, they kind of shortened it down to Visual Kei. And then over the next generation in the 2000s, they shortened that down to VK. So that's why we have VK now. So it is still Visual Kei. There are still people who even go out of their way to still call it Visual Shock Kei. I have a couple of friends who are more into the Eroguro and Guro like side of Visual Kei, so they still consider themselves Visual Shock Kei instead of Visual Kei. Whereas I'm just over here like, I'm cool with VK. I'm cool with it. So it really just depends on like what subsect you are under and like what you feel comfortable with saying. Hey, mix it up. Shocking Visual Kei. The K that is visual and is also shocking. These are all things that are acceptable. I don't make the rules. So yeah, so X Japan is the most popular Japanese band of all time. They have played at the Tokyo Dome 18 plus times, and the last 5 years from 90, I want to say 94 to 99. I had this written down somewhere, but then I forgot. 94 to 99, they played 5 back-to-back, like yearly concerts on New Year's at the Tokyo Dome. Like that, they were that big. And they were also one of the first Japanese bands to achieve mainstream success in Japan. Not a lot of Visual Kei got outside of Japan until the late 90s, early 2000s. And even then, one of the pioneers of Visual Kei, Luna C, they didn't go too far. I guess I can say. They toured in Taiwan, but they never reached Europe or America. So, but everyone was eating up their music because, around the time where hair metal and like more glam metal and stuff started coming out, it like everyone was eating it up. Everyone was like, oh my God, this is perfect. This is literally the best thing since like bread, not even sliced bread, just bread. Whoever sat down and thought of like taking some wheat and like making it into something that was more edible than what it already was. It's the same thing. They also sold over 30 million records, which when you think about American music in general or Western music in general, you hear about like artists that get like over 50 or 100 million sold copies on like albums or whatever. But it's like this was like revolutionary. 30 million copies over the span of like a decade of music in like Visual Kei. That's like amazing. That's literally outstanding. Not that many bands in Visual Kei have actually gone to that level. There have been a few, like during Gray and the Gazette, but not a lot of people reached that kind of success. So it was like immaculate. It was like, wow, look at this. So yeah, so some more Visual Kei bands of the 80s. X Japan, which disbanded in 1997. So my apologies, correction, from 1992 to 1997. They played 5 straight back-to-back concerts at the Tokyo Dome for New Year's. Another thing that you will see about a lot of bands, especially bands in the 80s, they have actually they've surpassed a lot of groups from the 90s and 2000s as far as like staying together as a band. A lot of these groups that have either made comebacks or reunions and have been making music since, or a lot of bands that have been perfectly fine, have not been touched at all. Like Bucktick is like a great example of a Visual Kei band that was there from the beginning and just did not go anywhere. Like everybody loved Bucktick. So like, they're like, we like music and people like us. We're not gonna go anywhere. So yeah, so down here on the left, sorry, didn't mean to go to the right. Down here on the left is Bucktick. And they debuted in 1983, and they're still going strong. They're still going very strong. And X Japan is over here on the right. They disbanded around 1997, but then like a decade later, they came back and they had a reunion tour. Yoshiki, who is like the front man of the group, started his own record label in like the 80s, and now there's so many people that are on the record label, including bands from today. He's been everywhere. I mean, he even went to Coachella in 2018 and like played with my apologies. He even went to Coachella in like 2018 and played with like a bunch of rock bands, and I was like, that's wild. Like, you're the first ever Visual Kei person to ever play at Coachella. Like, that's wild. So yeah, so the 90s was considered the band boom. And in the early 90s is when Visual Kei really began to take off. Literally in 1990, the very first Visual Kei only magazine came out, and it was called Shocks. And it pretty much said, hey, here is a band that you may not have known about, but they're pretty cool. Buy your CDs, come to these lives. It's about to be fun. More magazines will end up coming out later, and there will be some magazines that focus more on new and upcoming Visual Kei groups, and then there will be other ones that focus on the groups that already exist and have like pushed boundaries and have, I don't know, what's that video of Lady Gaga where she's just talking about like immaculate, amazing, never done before, spectacular, wonderful, like kind of like that. So the scene started to become known for its passionate fans who immerse themselves in the subculture, bringing gifts to concerts, cosplaying to look like the band members, though I wouldn't say too much of cosplay. And establishing strict gig etiquette. I've never been to a Visual Kei concert, which makes me sad. And it's like, wow, you've never been to a Visual Kei concert? Yeah, unfortunately, I've never been. I've been to some J-Rock concerts, and let me tell you, a lot of them are pretty lax compared to Visual Kei concerts. I have a lot of friends that regularly go to Visual Kei concerts, and they update me all the time on like gig etiquette and, when to be silent for certain songs, especially during ballads, when to be loud and when to have fun, like during their, let's just have fun types of songs and stuff. A lot of people, not a lot of people, like most people tend to bring gifts for a lot of the band members. And I think it's really sweet. I think it's really, really sweet. The only other time I've seen that kind of like kindness in a community where you just bring people gifts that are performing for you and everything like that is usually in K-pop. Yeah, I think I've only really seen it in K-pop. But then again, it could be other places. It could be everywhere else. Um, yeah. So by the mid '90s, Visual Kei had like gained so much success in and out of Japan that there started to be more groups forming outside of Japan. Like I have a section on international Visual Kei groups because surprisingly there are, and they're still active and they still make music. Like there's one group that I'm going to talk to you about that started in like South Korea and has been going strong and actually released something like this year. So it's still like that's why I say that like Visual Kei isn't dead. Like people are still like striving for it. But yeah, I digress. Lunacy was the very first Visual Kei band to travel internationally. Like I said, they had a sold out concert. They had sold out concerts. My apologies, put respect on their name in Taiwan from the years like 1989 to like 1991. 1990 was the very first Visual Kei only magazine, labeled Shocks, and Breakout was also a show created in the 90s to help showcase more new Visual Kei bands. So there are actually a couple of videos on YouTube where you can see Malice Miser interviews, you can see a couple of Bucktick interviews, and if they're not on Breakout, then they're on other like news and TV programmings in Japan. Um, Also during the 90s there were four major groups that literally like defined the Visual Kei genre, and everyone was like they're perfect, no one can touch them, and like to the point where they called them the Heavenly Four, like the four heavenly kings. They were like no one can touch these four groups. Like I don't care if you're J-rock, I don't care if you're J-pop, like no one can touch these groups. And even though they didn't acclaim too much notoriety or success in Japan within the 90s. Early 2000s, they took off, and they took off outside of Japan too. And the only thing that's unfortunate is that, like, because there was still a bit of a divide when it comes to what we received as far as entertainment from specific countries, we didn't get Visual Kei until like a lot of these groups had either disbanded or went on indefinite hiatus. So it's sad, but it's kind of a thing of like, you know what? At least we're here now. So Malice Miser is probably the most well known of the four Heavenly Kings. They didn't have as much success in Japan when they were around, but in America, in England, and even in like Germany, they blew up. Like everyone loved their style, everyone loved their music, everyone like during the Gocht era, because there are different eras for Malice Miser vocalists and like stuff. During the Gocht era, when Gocht was in the band or whatever, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Like even now, fun fact: the only Mouse Miser stuff that I show my boyfriend is when Gocht was in the band because that's his like favorite. That's like his everything. That's his favorite thing. Um, so Shanza is another group where there is an androgynous member, and a lot of people looked up to this group because they really started breaking like gender rules and gender norms. They were like, let's go. Like I'm wearing a skirt one day, dress next day, I'm wearing heels this day. So they were a very effeminate group, but they still had very androgynous looks in music. Um Lacrima Christie is also another like big hair, like pale face Visual K group, but they focus a lot of music on like romance and the sadness of like losing a loved one. It's interesting. And then Fanatic Crisis. I actually haven't listened to too much Fanatic Crisis. I didn't even realize they were considered part of the Four Heavenly Kings until I had started doing research for this. So that is definitely a group that I still have to check out. But as far as I've seen from their looks and everything, I believe that they helped like really establish Casual K because a lot of their looks were defined by like kind of crazy hairstyles, but clothing and makeup were still kind of shot to a minimum. Major bands that dominated the 90s include Mouse Miser, Duran Gray, another group that is similar to Duran Gray called Piero. Glay and Larkin CL are two groups that started off Visual K, but then as the 2000s came around and Glay and Larkin CL started seeing success outside of Japan, they were actually some of the first groups to see success outside of Japan. They dropped their Visual K look and aesthetic and everything, and they just stuck to straight up J rock. That is a running theme for a lot of Visual K groups, unfortunately, and that's also what led to the decline, which I'm getting ready to explain to you. Luna C is the other like pioneering group of Visual K that helped really define the genre, not only as a fashion statement, but as a music movement. And Penicillin, pretty great group. I do not listen to them often because it's just not my style, but they are also very good. Kind of similar to Duran Gray and Piero, but sometimes a bit softer. Oh, I hope that makes sense. So, there are major Visual K magazines, and I'm very happy because I just purchased some new, not like new, but like I purchased Visual K magazines off of a website called CD Japan. CD Japan, which has a lot of positive reviews. I will definitely also give you guys like resources to get like CDs, magazines, anything like that. I've started a Visual K CD collection. I have five, no, I have six Gazette albums and singles. I have a couple of Duran Gray, and then I've got some other bands. But I'm really happy about magazine purchases because not only do magazines include more information about the artist that is being presented on the front cover, but they also include style tips. They usually include music tips. Sometimes they include like sheet music in case you want to learn a song or do a cover. And a lot of the times, depending on who they have featured in like their interview section, they'll also have a poster of the artist, which it just it's just chef's kiss. It's perfect. It's great. So Shocks was the very first. Cure, this one down here. This one is a magazine that is more focused on showcasing new and upcoming talent in the Visual Kei scene, whereas Massive mainly pays attention to the ones that have already cemented themselves into the genre. So this cover over here, which is one of the magazines I just got, is for Duran Gray. Obviously, they've cemented themselves heavy in the Visual Kei scene, even if they don't present fully as Visual Kei anymore. Fool's Mate is also a very good magazine to collect, though my favorites to collect definitely have to be Shocks and Arena 37 because they have whew, like full photo shoots. I mean, when it comes to getting band magazines and getting magazines that feature your favorite bands, like they're like whew, outstanding. All the content, all the beautiful content that you could want. Yeah, and here's some more magazines. Like I said, this is from Cure. This group here, they are Mejibre. They also fall under the Eroguro category. They don't explicitly show a lot of nudity or gore, but their image heavily revolves around horrific things. I listen to them. They're one of my favorites. What can I say? And Fool's Mate is also, I wouldn't say like, oh, it's old, but like it's definitely also one of the first to come out, with the first two volumes being Duran Gray and Malice Miser. I want both of them so bad. So bad. Okay, so in the late 90s, unfortunately, the Visual Kei scene suffered and had a great decline for multiple reasons, but the biggest ones were disbandment of influential groups like Lunacy and X Japan. It's like waking up one morning and being like, "Yeah, dope! I get to see some of my favorite people," and then you go out and they're like, "Nah, we're not hanging out anymore." And it's like, this is so heartbreaking. Um, so Lunacy disbanded in 2000, literally at the turn of the century. X Japan disbanded in 1997, and they suffered a very great loss of their guitarist and one of the inspirations for the Visual Kei movement in general, Hideto Matsumoto. Uh, he was great. He was awesome. I mean, there isn't much that I can say because I wasn't around back then. I wasn't even like conscious enough to understand what Japanese music or Japanese culture was in general. But from multiple articles that I've read, multiple interviews that I've seen, he was an exceptional person. He was very kind, very thorough, very intelligent, very creative, and everyone loved him. A lot of tragedy happened after his passing, but we're not going to get into that. Another sad thing, just to get all the sad stuff out the way, because we're trying to be happy. We're trying to be like, yeah, Visual Kei is not dead. Woohoo. Um, Kami, who was the amazing drummer from Malice Miser, also passed away. And not long after that, Gocht had left Malice Miser around the time when Malice Miser was starting to like pick up in momentum. Many other groups had also followed suit with either disbanding or changing styles and genres. Most notably, like I said, Larkin CL and Glay were some of the first groups to really change from Visual Kei just to straight J rock and like drop all association with Visual Kei. And it's led to a lot of things happening to Visual Kei in the future. And I'm not at all saying that it is any of their fault for the things that have happened. I'm also not saying anything like against like doing what you need to do in order to earn money and then living your life. But because of this, we end up getting a lot of copycat Visual Kei bands that want to copy off of the success of, previously successful bands. And then as soon as they get to where they want to be or they get that bit of success, then they drop it entirely. And it's not fun. So Neo Visual Kei was the 2000s. This was literally like the second generation of Visual Kei. The biggest differences are the second generation has no straightforward music style. Visual Kei back in the 80s and 90s were strictly metal, like strictly metal and rock. The ballads and everything still had very heavy rock elements in them, but there was no variation of style. In the 2000s, that's when they started bringing in pop. That's when they started bringing in dance, EDM. They started using hip hop. I was shook. I was like, hip hop in a Visual Kei song? I don't know how to explain it. It was crazy for me. Um, so they also focus on a lot of darker styles and a lot of darker lyrics than their predecessors. Um, that's when like everything kind of just took off and said, let's talk about some horrific stuff. Visual style and makeup became more of an importance than the music, which is why when I was explaining Nagoya K earlier, a lot of people tend to prefer that because it focuses more on the music and the message rather than the looks. Not to say that Neo Visual K is like completely focused on the looks and that music doesn't mean anything to them anymore, but the style, everything that we kind of know now about Visual K started around this generation of like, oh, wild color hair. You gotta, wear shorts like your life depends on it. Fishnets everywhere. Stripes, you better. So, this was also the first generation to achieve full international success, even if it wasn't as successful in Japan at the time. And I mean that in the sense of like a lot of Visual K groups toured Europe in the 2000s. Like, a lot. And some of them have even made it to America, like Duran Gray, the Gazette. I keep naming the same examples, but you know what? That's what we got to do sometimes. So bands that like really took the 2000s. Like they grabbed the 2000s, like snatched it away from everyone. The Gazette, Darren Gray, Alice Nine, Garugamesh, Despairs Ray, and Versailles. Versailles is group on the right. They are more of the European inspired Visual Kei. And then Garugamesh is the group on the left. I did that because I really wanted to see them live before they disbanded, but unfortunately they did before I could see them. It's okay because they're all healthy, they're all happy. That's all that matters to me. I've still got all of their music on Spotify and on SoundCloud, and I've got albums and I've got posters. I will be fine. Also, there have been women in Visual Kei, have been, as if there aren't any more. Two of the most prominent all-female Visual Kei groups are Exist Trace, which came out around 2003, and then Danger Gang, who debuted in 2002. They're both still active. They haven't made music in a couple of years due to low funding and budgeting. And similar to how male Visual Kei groups tend to have a more feminine / androgynous look, female Visual Kei groups tend to have a more masculine / androgynous look. I mean, we just love it here. Everyone just said, "What is gender? What is it? It's beautiful." In 2008, Exist Trace went on a European tour and came to America 2011 through 2013. They came to Seattle around 2012 for a concert. I almost had an opportunity to go. I'm sad that I didn't get to. And as far as Danger Gang is concerned, they have not been outside of Japan, but they're working on, getting to that level of success, and I wish the best for them. Also, like I was telling you before, international Visual Kei groups. As Visual Kei grew as a genre, more people started saying, "Hey, you know what? This is actually cool." Madmen's Esperate came out in 2010 in Seoul, and they moved to Berlin like a couple years after that, and they've just taken off. They did an entire tour of Europe at some point, and they're doing fine. They're doing great. They recently came out with a song about half a year ago. I'm actually not 100% sure what their comeback was called, but they're a good group. I'm not going to knock them. They also do sing in Korean and in Japanese, so that's also very interesting. And then there's Yohio. A lot of people know about Yohio. I'm not quite sure how many, though, because I haven't personally talked to anyone that knows about Yohio, but I knew about Yohio since, I left high school. So he's a Swedish Visual Kei singer-songwriter. He's currently active in Japan. He was a former member of a Swedish rock band called Serenity that disbanded in 2013. They also kind of had a Visual Kei style, but not as, out there. He has his own record label. And when he started making music, he wore a Lolita, and he is also, androgynous in appearance and style. So here are some of the most prominent bands from the early 2000s, which the Gazette, obviously, and Alice Nine, Nocturnal Bloodlust, who is a favorite band of mine, and the others. Gokta and Miyavi are also two incredibly popular Visual Kei soloists that really made their mark, and they were like, "Hey, let's just open up the door and bring everyone to America. So we're going to start and you guys can follow." So here are all of my personal favorites. X Japan, obviously. Buck Tick, Malice Miser, The Gazette, Darren Gray, Garugamesh, Alice Nine, D, Nocturnal Bloodlust, Lynch, and Miyavi. So, I've got a lot more favorites than this, but these are the ones that have really cemented the style, the music, everything for me. The Gazette actually came out with a song around the time that I first, started getting more into Visual Kei, because at first I just listened to The Gazette, Alice Nine, and Darren Gray. I didn't really branch out that much, but I got out of high school and they released a single called Tomorrow Never Dies, and it was literally a song to the fans saying, "Hey, even though things are rough, we don't want you to harm yourself. We don't want you to, you know, go through anything that could be detrimental to you. And it helped me out a lot because I was in a very dark place when I was young. And from then on, I was just like, I'm sold. Like you guys have my heart. So yeah, so here's how you can style Visual Kei. Extravagant and exaggerated makeup, chokers, collars, multiple necklaces, chains, belts, arm warmers and gloves, unique accessories like eye patches and nose bands, stripes, mesh, dyed hair. It's like everything that's usually out of the norm. A lot of people tend to compare it to like the alternative movement that we have here in the Western countries. And that's honestly a good comparison. Layering is such a big thing in Visual Kei. Layering is so important. This is very minimal when it comes to layering. I have outfits where I layer like belts, I layer chains, but I wanted to keep it simple so that you can get an idea of what it is. There are definitely places that you can shop for Visual Kei-esque clothing, like Hot Topic, Phantasmagoria, and Rebels Market. Also on Rebels Market, there's an entire section of the website dedicated to explaining Visual Kei. So it's perfect. But also some artists like Mana from Malice Miser, Mana-sama, from Malice Miser and the Gazette have their own fashion labels, and they tend to be a bit more expensive. So, one good thing that I like to take from doing Visual Kei styles and stuff, especially over the past like few years, thrift shopping will always be your best friend, no matter what style you go for. Even if you're not going for a style in Visual Kei, thrift stores will be your best friend. And sometimes you will have to just make your own clothes. And that's the beauty of Visual Kei, is that you make your own clothes and you're unique. You're you. I mean, that's how it is. Um yeah. So I like to take a lot of clothing and either add like chains to them or like take belts that don't fit me anymore and break them apart and like sew them to my clothing to make them, look cooler. And because I am plus size, I do have to make my own clothes. A lot of the times in Asian markets or in markets that are outside of America, they don't usually, especially for Visual Kei, they never have like plus sizes. And it gets a bit disheartening, especially because I am a person of color and I am plus size. So seeing manuals are like, oh, if you want to go for the Visual Kei look, you gotta like use white foundation or use foundation that's light so that you can look pale, or you gotta get clothes from like certain websites and stuff. I don't follow those because I cannot, but I make all of my own Visual Kei-esque clothes. Like this is literally a pair of fishnet leggings that I tore a hole in for my head to fit and now it fits. Um, this shirt, even though I didn't make it, I got it from a thrift store. Chains I got from a craft store. This wig I actually dyed myself because sometimes, and a lot of the times, depending on your income, depending on your size, depending on a lot of things, you will have to make stuff yourself. But like I said before, the most amazing thing about Visual Kei is that it's a movement that exists for you to be yourself. It doesn't matter how much money you have, who you are, what your gender is, what size you are, your race, your sexuality, anything like that. Visual Kei is meant to be something that helps you like stand out. It's supposed to give you a place to belong when you feel like you don't belong anywhere. And for me, Visual Kei is that. It's somewhere for me to belong when I feel like I don't belong anywhere. So, with that being said, I would like to thank you very much for joining this part of the presentation, and I'm going to get ready to do this makeup for you and show you how I like to do my Visual Kei makeup. So, Alexis, I would like to be bigger. Thank you very much. So, thankfully, off camera, I have already started with my base. So I've done foundation and concealer. You don't always have to do foundation and concealer. You can just put makeup on your bare face, and that's perfectly fine. But because I am prone to breakouts and I break out very easily, I gotta do a base. I can't just put stuff on my bare face. I gotta yeah. So now that I've done my base, I've got my wacky hair, everything's cool. Now it's time to paint. So today I have a palette. This is a very inexpensive palette. It's like, I think when I last checked, it was like $12. And it is from Makeup Revolution. And once I get it open, I can show it. Ha ha. Ha ha. There we go. So this, nope, wrong finger. This blue shade right here is going to be one of the colors that I end up using today. And we're going to be doing like a blue kind of green, like very teary-eyed makeup look. So I like to start with a very light base. My light bases are concealer. I don't have like the resources or the means to like get a eyeshadow primer that a lot of other people use. And there's nothing wrong even if you don't want to get an eyeshadow primer. Like, it's have fun, do you. So yes, now I look weird with this bright color, this bright foundation, this bright concealer, but I like to go ahead and blend that in. And it doesn't have to be immaculate. Like, and when you're doing this and you're blending this in and everything, and you go, oh darn, it looks messy, that's the point. That's a very, very, very good thing about Visual Kei, is that because it's such an eccentric and very like wild and out there subculture, you can do whatever you want and it will be fine because it's what makes you happy. So yeah, one is a bit more out there than the other, and that's okay. All right. So now I'm going to go ahead and take this palette. You can take your finger, you can take a brush, whatever you would like. I'm going to take my finger and a brush. And, you know, whatever color you want to use, you put that on. You put that on and you feel proud. Why? Because you did it. And using my finger is like easier to kind of get the colors to not only appear, but to be as saturated as possible. So after I finish putting this blue on this lid, I'm going to go ahead and put green on this lid. I was originally going to make this like a fully blue and yellow look, but then I thought, why wouldn't I add some green to it? That sounds amazing. I also usually like do warm tones and stuff like in the summer and in the fall, but usually in like the winter and the spring, I'm very cool tone. Very, very cool tone. And now we're starting on the green. And like I said, if this looks too messy to you, you are perfectly fine and welcome to like grab a brush and blend everything out so that way it looks a bit more seamless. Because listen, just like there are Visual Kei bands that, you know, kind of have the messy style of makeup, there are also Visual Kei bands that spend more time on their look and spend more time on looking their best. But me, I'm a gremlin. I just put it on my face. I'm not gonna say that. Like, usually when I do my makeup, it takes me about. Now I'm just going in with the brush just to kind of blend it all out. I usually take anywhere from 2 to 5 hours to do my makeup, depending on what style I'm doing. And today, because I'm doing um kind of simple Visual Kei, I say kind of because I always have to be extra for some reason. But because I'm doing simple Visual Kei, it's not going to take me that long at all. Visual Kei, you don't have to be a master at anything. You don't have to be some trained professional to like do the makeup or whatever. I mean, yeah, sure, you might have to be a trained professional to like play the music and like, but this is why I don't own any instruments. So, with that, actually, boom. Now that the eye look is done, I'm going to take my special. I have water activated eyeliners, and there are some that are out there that are incredibly cheap. The ones that I have only cost me like $4 each, $4 each, but they're like little paint pots, and you can take a brush. It can be like a paintbrush, it can be like a nail art brush, anything that you have on hand, anything that you can easily access. I literally got paintbrushes from the craft store. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to create teardrops. And with the teardrops we create, we're going to outline them in different colors. But Melissa, I thought you said that Visual Kei includes dark colors. Yeah, I just wasn't thinking about it. This, like I said, is also still technically Visual Kei because you don't always have to wear dark colors in order to call yourself Visual Kei. I'm still, however, not Oshade Kei. But that's like this is like a bad time to say it because I already kind of looked the part. And doesn't have to be neat or anything. We just very much so like the curve of the tears. Also, a lot of people know about some of the bands that I've mentioned today because of anime. And like I know that anime is a sure way for people to like get introduced to Visual Kei because a lot of Visual Kei bands make openings, endings, or just OSTs in general for anime. One of the more popular ones obviously being the second opening for Black Butler, which is Shiver by the Gazette. All right, I'm gonna do these tears on the other side, and then we're gonna outline them. All right, and now after that, kind of just like regular paint brushes, I like to clean mine off and then go into another color. And it's so much fun because it's like it just feels like painting. Well, I am painting. Forgive me. So then, like I said, it doesn't have to be neat or anything. I just take it and I outline it. It doesn't show up cleanly on camera, but that is okay because I'm going to take pictures of this and post this on social media. So that way, if you like to see it, then you may see it on my Instagram. Okay. And now I will do an odd one and put that right in the center. And if there's a question of what I'm inspired by today, okay, that actually looks kind of cool. All right, cool. So normally I would take a oh, I'm sorry, I did not finish my sentence. Agony by the Gazette is a very interesting song. Um, and Hyena is also a very interesting song by the Gazette. So I'm kind of just doing a mixture of both. Something else that I like to do to kind of distinguish my makeup and stuff is I like to take a brush. If I can remember what I'm doing right, I like to take a brush, open up my makeup palette, and I'll take, like, for example, if I can get in the shot, this greenish blue right here, and I'm just gonna go to the front of my brows and make them a different color at the front. And because I've got green on one side, blue on the other, I'll put green on one side, blue on the other. I'm joking, I'm gonna add more green. Look at me, an unrelatable narrator. All right. Yep. Okay, cool. So that is that. And then usually, I know one of my eyebrows is like higher than the other. That I unfortunately don't know why my face is built like that. um, I like to take a black lipstick of any color, like any variety, whether it be gloss, whether it be matte, and I apply it to make a contrast between the dark colors and the light colors, because I'm also going to go onto my upper eyelid and put on black eyeliner. Now, I do not have them with me today, but if you feel like false eyelashes are a bit too hard to maneuver, a lot of brands, makeup brands, are coming out with magnetic eyelashes. I've tried some, they work like a charm. And usually, what it is there is a pair of lashes that have a magnetic band on them. And it typically comes with a solution, a magnetic solution for your lashes to stick on. So you would take it and you would take the solution and you would go against your eye, like the same way I'm doing my eyeliner, same way you would do your eyeliner. But because there is a magnetic substance in it, once you put the lashes on top, they automatically stick. You don't have to worry about them not sticking. All right, I'm going to go and finish this eye. I will not be putting on any lashes because even though eyelashes are a big part of Visual Kei, they are not a staple. And because not everyone is fond of lashes, in case you decide to do this look, or any look, I just want to make it clear and make it known that you do not have to wear lashes to look exaggerated or present Visual Kei. And now I will take these hair clips out. Whoop. And I grab my hat again. And there we go. All right. Sometimes I like to put it on the side, look a little funky. Sometimes I like to put it on the other side, look a little funky. Sometimes I like to put it in the back to look extra funky because you can see my wig cap, but that's okay. Today, we're just leaving it to the side like this. So, other than that, this is the finished look for today. I will probably end up within the next like few days to like a week sitting down for like a good 5-6 hours and like actually making this elaborate. But for right now, this is where we are. And I hope that you guys enjoyed this. I know that there have been a lot of mistakes and a lot of interruptions, but I'm very, very thankful to have this opportunity to sit up here and talk about something that has literally shaped my life and something that I've been a fan of since I was like 12. I never thought I would honestly see the day that I could sit in front of someone, multiple people, and talk about this. So, like I said, all of my socials are available. I'd love to make some new friends. If you would like some more information on Visual Kei, whether it be bands, whether it be the style, whether it be more resources in order to kind of start off with basic Visual Kei stuff, just remember stripes, plaid, fishnet, chains, and you're good. You're on your way. Um, it was fun. I thankfully got over my nerves by the middle of it. And yeah, so I really, really do hope that everyone is having an amazing day. I know this year has been hard for a lot of people, myself included, and I'm hoping that this could have given you a little bit of happiness, take your mind off of everything that's going on right now. And yeah, I hope the rest of this year is just as amazing for you guys. And yeah, I don't know how to end this off, but thank you so much.